Good morning, everyone, and welcome. We're delighted to have all of you here this morning in what will be, I think, a very informative and inspirational hour on this topic of the heart of leadership. We're delighted to have all of you here. I want to welcome Kara Sundlun and Mark Bertolini and Lieutenant Brad Snyder, who will all be formally introduced here in a few moments. I want to certainly thank Fidelco, the Guide Dog Foundation, and Elliot Russman, who will be up here in a minute. This program was put together during Veterans Day week. Obviously Veterans Day earlier this week, but the entire week of celebrating and recognizing and expressing appreciation and gratitude for all those who serve or have served in our military services. And I would just ask if any of you who are active or retired from any one of the branches of the military could just stand for a moment so we could recognize. Just take a minute if you could please stand. I want to also thank Aetna for being our sponsor, and obviously Mark will be up here shortly. A couple of acknowledgments to how important Aetna is to us at the Alliance and to this entire region. Everyone knows that they are one of our major employers and also one of the most engaged corporations in terms of their financial support, but as importantly, the encouragement that they provide to their employees to be involved in all kinds of activities and organizations around this region. They are obviously one of the most respected health insurance companies in the country, one of the leaders in this area, and we are very blessed to have the relationship that we have with them as a leadership investor. Martha Temple represents Aetna on our board. We have great relationships with people like Brad Morse and Tim Meyer, Floyd Green, and Chris Montross. So to all of you at Aetna, it's a great opportunity to say thank you for all that you do for this region, and thank you all do for the Alliance. So before I introduce Elliot Russman formally, I also want to give a few words of thanks. Programs like this don't come together without a lot of work and a lot of effort, so I do want to acknowledge everyone, Elliot and everyone at the Fidelco team for all the work that went into organizing this, putting the program together, making connections within the Aetna family. Thank everyone at Aetna who was directly involved in this, Martha and Floyd and Chris for all of your work. And on our team, I want to thank Laura Dinan-Haber, Brian Boyer, and most of all Nancy Wheeler for putting all their sweat equity into making this possible. Please give them all a warm round of applause. So without further ado, before I ask Elliot to come up, I had the privilege of interviewing Lieutenant Snyder on the radio for part of our Pulse of the Region show that helped promote today's event. And I know between Mark and Lieutenant Snyder, we're in, as I said a few minutes ago, not only for an informative hour, but also a very inspirational one. So we're delighted to have you all here. And without further ado, let me welcome to the podium Elliot Russman, the CEO and Executive Director of the Fidelco Guide Dog Foundation. Elliot.
Good morning. As the CEO of a nonprofit, I'm responsible for a lot of things, but one of the things that's also in my job description is to be the thanker-in-chief. So we can never say thank you enough as a nonprofit, but let me say thank you again to everyone that's in this room, Oz and Nancy and the entire Metro Hartford Alliance. Mark, thank you for being here. I know you're busy. Kara and Brad, thank you so much, and also the staffs of our three great organizations. You know, at the core DNA, right at the center of what Fidelco is and Fidelco Guide Dog Foundation does, is that we create partnerships. We create life-changing and life-saving partnerships. But we can only do this because we have partners who believe in what we do and the services that we deliver. Donors, volunteers, and the great staff of Fidelco work together as a team in partnership to change the lives of men and women who are blind. So I'll issue an invitation. If you like what you see today, if you were inspired by the program, Bring your passion to Fidelco. Bring your organization's passion, bring your individual passion, and we will find a place for you. I can guarantee it. Oz, I want to thank you for recognizing the veterans, and I also want to add on to that like blindness, military service is not just an individual effort. It's an effort of family and community. So to those of you who are in the audience today who are family members of either active duty or veterans, let me say thank you too for your service and for your sacrifice. It's important. When I approached Nancy and Oz about this event, I said, let's just do something different. So the goal, and they said yes, and the goal today is to inspire you, to challenge you, to maybe give you an opportunity to learn something, and maybe you'll even take it back to your own respective organizations or life situations and apply it. Because we're going to be engaging this morning with two very, very successful leaders. And now I'd like to introduce our participants this morning. First, I want to thank and introduce Kara Sundlun, an Emmy Award-winning news reporter and anchor of the afternoon news on WFSB TV. And also, now it's my turn to do a plug, a soon-to-be best-selling author of a book called Finding Dad. I read it over the weekend, although I think it was technically released on Tuesday, Veterans Day. Her father was also a veteran, a war hero. So I would encourage you to reach out and find Finding Dad. It's in bookstores. Kara, please. I have the pleasure of introducing Mark Bertolini, the Chairman, CEO, and President of Aetna. I want to thank the Metro Hartford Alliance for introducing us, because it was almost 5 years ago that we were on the same dais as newly minted CEOs of our respective organizations. Mark and I struck up a conversation and a friendship, and Mark serves on Fidelco's board of directors. Now, for a Fortune 100 CEO, that's a significant commitment. He's not a guy who talks the talk, he's a guy who walks the walk. In almost 4 years, he has only missed 2 board meetings. And that's because his own company had the hubris to schedule their board meeting on the same day as ours. Mark, thank you for your leadership and thank you for your friendship.
Thank you, Elliot.
I'm so humbled to introduce our next participant that I'm not really going to say anything. We brought a video that contains messages from 3 of our veteran clients, including retired Navy Lieutenant Brad Snyder, and I think I'll just let the video speak for itself.
It's very sobering to know that so many people still care so much about others that they're willing to sacrifice so much. My family will never be the same. We will always be grateful for everything.
If it wasn't for people contributing to this great organizations and others like it, I might be sitting at home living in the bottom of a bottle of scotch the rest of my life.
It's due to a lot of amazing people, and I'm really thankful that they were all there for me in a time of need, and everything I've done over the last year is kind of just to thank them and kind of reciprocate that commitment, and I feel really good about what we were able to accomplish today.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have the honor and privilege of introducing retired Navy Lieutenant Brad Snyder.
Well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I just want to say that I'm so pleased to see everyone here because as a journalist and a Hartford resident, on 2 fronts, I just think events like this that celebrate all the good things that are going on in our community and give you the opportunity to meet some of the inspiring leaders in our community are a great thing, so thank you all for being here. So we have some questions. We're going to just moderate this. We might end up taking some questions from the audience, or I might end up asking some of my own, but some of them have been sent in advance. All about what people want to know is your leadership styles, how you've achieved all that you've achieved, and overcome the obstacles in your way, because both of you have been through significant challenges in your life. And I think I'd like to start there. Mark, tell us a little bit, because I was so inspired when I read the book Thrive with Arianna Huffington, and I didn't know this about you, but here it is, the CEO of Aetna, right in our own community, and he made groundbreaking changes in your business, in part because of something very personal that happened to you. Tell us what happened.
Well, my son was diagnosed with cancer at the age of 16, and we were told he was going to die in 6 months. And so I left my work, went and lived with him in his hospital room, and we found a way to have him cured. He's the only one to ever survive his cancer. And today he lives a very productive life, and we've done some amazing things together. I gave him my kidney in 2007, and we share a lot given that journey. A year after he got out of the hospital to the day, I broke my neck extreme skiing and ended up with a paralysis of my left arm and incredible neuropathic pain, and had to find my way again through the health system. So as a result of those journeys, I realized that I was uniquely prepared to have an impact on a healthcare system that really doesn't work well to get people back to high level of functioning. And I wouldn't recommend it as a developmental path for anybody. It's a way for me to have learned how the system is broken and how we can make it better.
Wow. And Lieutenant Snyder, tell us a little bit about what happened to you.
So kind of similar to the phone call that Mark got with his son, my mom received a phone call at 5:30 in the morning on September 7th, 2011, that her son had been badly injured as a result of a combat explosion. She was promptly flown to Walter Reed, where she met me coming off of an aircraft from Afghanistan, where I had been conducting assault operations in support of our efforts there. We were working with an Afghan unit. I stepped on an improvised explosive device in an effort to render medical aid to others who had been injured in the same area. Thankfully, the blast occurred a few feet in front of me, which largely saved my life. I probably wouldn't be here today if it was closer to me. As a result of the explosion, I lost my vision, but thankfully was able to come away with both my arms and both my legs. Had kind of a similar road back. My mother and my family were in the hospital with me for in intensive care for 3 weeks, in varying stages of other care for 5 weeks to 3 months, at which point, or somewhere along the way, we realized we'd be blind for the rest of my life, and kind of began that road back. Thankfully, as part of that road back, found adaptive athletics as a cathartic experience for myself and my family to prove that nothing was going to change, that I'm the same Brad as I was beforehand. The only thing different is that I can't see. I guess I was lucky to have been injured in an Olympic year, because I had the opportunity to join the Paralympic national team on our way to London, at which point I was able to win some races, which was a way to show, again, to kind of put an exclamation mark on that statement that I'm the same Brad as I always was. I was a warrior before I lost my vision. I'm still a warrior, and I'm still going to succeed and be as successful as I always wanted to be.
Thank you. I mean, both of you are so positive, and you used what happened to you to make you stronger, to make you better. What does it mean to you to be a leader in each of your chosen industries? Mark, I'll start with you.
Well, it's been a long journey for me. I thought I knew what a leader was when I started in my business field back in the 80s and 90s and built organizations and was very successful. But as a result of this journey, I can tell you that leadership really is about personal risk.
Okay.
And it's about putting yourself out there. Personal risk in being selfless for those around you, being compassionate with the people who are struggling to make ends meet, and really finding a way to understand yourself first. And so people always look for sponsors in the work. It's not out here. This is all illusion. What really matters is that you know yourself. And if you know yourself and what you're really good at, that you love to do, you'll be incredibly successful, because you go to work with joy every day. And so if you find that and put yourself out there as an authentic leader, at personal risk for having people say things about you that you may not want to hear, it really won't matter because you'll build the followership you need to lead.
Interesting, because we don't think of selflessness, compassion. Those aren't usually words associated with corporate America or the competitive insurance industry, yet you would say those are what made you successful.
I've had to learn them along the way. It's
Yeah.
been a tough lesson.
Yeah. And Lieutenant Snyder, what about you? How have you, we know how you've overcome it, but how do you think of yourself being a leader?
Yeah, I think I move off of the theme of compassion. So I'm the oldest of 4, and so I've always kind of viewed myself as, you know, I'm setting the example for my younger brothers and my younger sister to follow. And what they didn't end up following me anywhere, which doesn't matter. To me, I still had that perspective. They followed me to Baltimore. That's as far as I got.
That's great.
But so, you know, that's kind of the way I grew up, and then that's why I wanted to serve. I wanted to be a positive example for my community, and all of it was built out of compassion. I love my country, I love my family, and I want to set that positive example. And that was largely refined by going to the Naval Academy and having the kind of peer leadership experiences I've had in the Navy. But I think that respect, mutual respect, is the biggest motivator you can find. Like, you can motivate people financially, you can motivate them through fear, but the most sustainable way and the most impactful way to lead people is through compassion, is by generating that mutual respect and getting people to want to work for you because they know that you're personally invested in them. That works on a family level, that works on an organizational level, and then I think that it's really what allowed me to negotiate a lot of steep challenges, not only the loss of my vision, but we as a family lost my father less than a year before I lost my vision. And these deep family challenges we all negotiated through compassion. It was waking up in the hospital with my mother in the room, knowing that she was there for me and knowing that I had to be strong for her as much as she needed to be strong for me. That mutual compassion and that mutual respect and that kind of mutual admiration, I guess, is what really allowed us to negotiate a lot of challenge. And so I think, looking back on my career, it's compassionate leadership that led me to success in combat, and it was compassionate leadership that allowed me to negotiate challenges with my family.
I'm struck by when you say, both of you stress compassion, which is so important, but to get to that phase, I mean, both of you went through life-altering experiences, and I write about that in my book, where, you know, we had a very rocky start with my father not acknowledging me, and then the happy ending. And to me, the step that got us to the compassion and the bonding was the forgiveness, the letting go, the taking the challenge and transforming it. You guys both had reason. Some people might have ended up just staying bitter. Some people might have just been angry. Some people might have used that to motivate through fear. Was there a process that you went through of letting go so that you could come from that more positive point?
I think from my perspective, I grew up an engineer, or like was trained as an engineer first, and all growing up I'd take things apart and break them down to their smallest elements to figure out exactly how this piece works or that piece works. When faced with a major challenge like the loss of my vision, you look at the different things that you can do. I could be positive about this and this is the possible outcome. I could be negative. And when I considered all those different outcomes, I thought, there's no point in being negative. It doesn't get anybody anywhere. And especially having been a leader, when I was in that room and received the news that I'm going to be blind, with everybody looking at me to see how I'd react, I knew that that's a moment where it doesn't do anybody good for me to be negative and to victimize myself about this. That's not a cathartic experience. I look back on, you know, one of my first leadership experience was as a captain of the swim team at Navy. And you think of that as a silly example of leadership because it's very small and there's really little responsibility and little ramifications of your actions in any case, but it's a good kind of test tube leadership experience. And the biggest thing I had to contend with on that team was cynicism. Everybody coming into practice and be like, man, we don't want to be here today, and oh, we have to swim 10,000 yards, it's really going to suck, and this and that, the other thing. And as the captain, I look at everyone like, you realize, like, you're at one of the best institutions in the country and you get to swim as like your job, and you know, you have all these resources. People, yeah, like, you know, people, free food and like, you know, free get. There's so many different ways to look at this in the positive light that are more cathartic, that are more beneficial. why not spend your time in that positive realm as opposed to the negative realm? And I think I built that habit over time. I just felt like negativity and cynicism were never very good, never very positive, never very worthwhile. And I remember early on in the hospital, advice from a fellow veteran who had lost a leg or something had come over and said, don't be a victim. Like, that's the best advice I ever got. Don't be a victim. And no matter what the circumstances, no matter what the situation is, it doesn't have to be the loss of your vision. It could be sitting in traffic. And you can sit there and get really angry because I'm sitting in traffic and everyone else is getting in my way. Just remember, don't be a victim. Like, you're not a victim of that circumstance. Everybody else is sitting in the same situation like you are. There's no reason to be negative. Just turn it into a positive. Well, there's more time to listen to NPR. I love This American Life, or whatever, you know.
And Mark, I know from reading Thrive, you went through your own process of just becoming more self-aware and how you turn those negatives into positives.
Yeah, I mean, you know, when it first happens, I remember when I woke up in the hospital after my skiing injury, the doctor came in and said, do you have any questions? Because they had not expected me to make it. And I looked at him and said, how do I get out of here?
Yeah.
And he said, well, why? And I said, because you people will kill me if I stay here too long. And
that makes us all feel so happy about the health system.
that, I kept asking people, have you washed your hands? Have you washed your hands? And so the whole idea was, how do I get back to normal?
Yeah.
And you know, you begin to realize some of the barriers you have. For me, it was, you know, loss of use of the arm, the pain that came with it, not being able to run, all those other sorts of things. And you say, okay, now, how can I do these things? How can I get back to work? And the amazing thing about Aetna is we have an ergonomics department, and they had me set up in an office 5 weeks after I got out of the hospital, even though with a one-handed keyboard and neck support for my chair, even though I wasn't probably very productive. But it was great to get back to work and get back to some semblance of life. And it's taken the better part of a decade to get all the pieces of my life back together that I lost in that one incident. But the journey of finding it and finding ways to do it was a better approach than saying, oh, woe is me. And I tried the drugs and the alcohol for a while in the first 6 months to control my pain, and it didn't work. And you know, I said, this is a terrible way to exist. So the alternative beats the alternative. And so as I think about the world today, now in the world I'm in, I'm not going to die from this.
Yeah.
Right? I know what that looks like or how close you can get to that. I'm not going to die from this. So you can only approach it with joy and excitement versus saying, oh, woe is me, we got to do all this tough stuff.
Right. Right. Well, that's so empowering as you sit here and you wonder, how do you become a leader? And it's making the different choices and taking that perception, because different choices obviously lead to different outcomes. So what's the one behavior trait that you think derails leaders' careers?
Selfishness. Mm-hmm. It's about me. I don't want to take any risk. I don't want to put myself at risk. It's being selfish. And when you see that happen, you don't get promoted by your boss, you get promoted by the people that work for you. And most people don't get that. Because if you get promoted in an organization and the rest of the team goes, oh my God, here we go, let's get the heck out of here, you know, you're not going to be very successful. So you have to have followership. And so a key decision is this a person that can build followership through being selfless, putting themselves at personal risk in the name of the enterprise and the team? Mm-hmm. And that's very hard for people to do because they view their personal success and not making any mistakes as the path to the top, and it's just not.
Interesting. It's a good take. Brad?
So from my perspective, without being too complicated, in the military, everything's partitioned into the officer world and the enlisted world. The enlisted world is generally more task-oriented. This is what we need to do today, and this is how we're going to accomplish our mission. Whereas the officer world gets into more of the bureaucracy of the entire military. How do we appropriate budgets? How do we, how do you do your manning? How do you do your logistics and all those sorts of things? So as a platoon OIC, officer in charge, my job was really to have one foot in both doors. So I had a 9-man platoon of enlisted guys, and then I also sat in all the meetings with all the officer world and had to contend with the bureaucracy. And a lot of times, my job would be to go sit in this meeting with the officer stuff and then go distill it down for the enlisted guys. This is what it means for you. Like, we're going to have to buy these uniforms, or we can't buy our boots here, we're going to have to buy them here. And the enlisted men really generally kind of they view the officer world as BS. Like, the bureaucracy is stupid. Why do we do all that?
That's like corporate America, right?
Exactly.
BS everywhere.
Exactly. Now, a lot of times, my job was to represent our platoon on the bureaucratic level, and if I was afraid of taking risk, if I was afraid of representing my boys and just doing exactly what my boss told me to do every time, that it completely erodes my platoon's respect in me. They have to know that when I go and sit in that meeting with the other officers, I have their best interest in mind, and that requires that I take risk, that I put my neck out there for my guys, and if they see that I'm willing to do that for them, they'll go to bat for me any day of the week. If they know that I'm self-serving and that I'm just out there to make my own rank and make myself look good and throw some more ribbons on my chest, they don't care about me, and it goes back to that compassionate leadership, that mutual respect. If they don't respect me, they're not going to work for me in the way that I need them to. So, to back up that personal risk statement, I have to be willing to go to bat for my people. They have to know that I'm personally invested in them and that I'm willing to represent their best interests despite the massive amount of bureaucracy we all contend with, no matter what the avenue, whether it's in the military or corporate America.
So it sounds to me like both of you, when you're saying personal risk, and that's something that your colleague Mika Brzezinski wrote about in Know Your Value and all that, was that there's often a fear, I think, as people who are rising up, like, I got to be liked. I got to be liked by my boss. I got to make people like me. I don't want to make a mistake that's going to make me not liked.
Right.
And yet, if you're going to go in there and maybe stick your neck out, you have to risk that maybe someone's not going to like your idea or think that you're not going with the company mission.
It's about authenticity. And so we all cover in some way. We all shield who we really are. I had to do a little bit of it to get this job, and quite frankly, this is the first time I've had a tie on in 2 weeks. I don't wear ties anymore. I don't shave. And to be authentic allows you then to be approachable and real to people. And that takes personal work. And you have to have your own personal practice to understand who you really are. And what you really represent, and bring that forward to the people you're working with. And it may not fit the situation, but if you know yourself, you'll find the right situation. I fix broken things and build new things. I do not make trains run on time. I hire people that do that. And so I have to know where my value is. And when the opportunities come, then it's apparent to me that it should be something I should do, and I can do it again joyfully and be incredibly successful as a result of going to work every day doing something I love to do, that I do well.
I just want to follow up before we move to Brad. You talk about a personal practice. What are some of the things you do that have helped you?
Well, I do yoga, meditation, Vedic chanting, pranayama. So I follow sort of a Hindu approach to personal practice. And meditation is where you really, we call yoga here in the States the poses. It's really asana. And that's asana and pranayama, really breathing, are meant to allow you to sit in meditation for an extended period of time to understand who you are. And the journey's inside, not outside. And so we look for affirmation from everyone around us, instead of looking for the truth inside and being authentic.
And this is why India just appointed a minister of yoga, because they want everyone to know how important this is. And for those of us who are still learning, I undertook that personal journey in the last 2 years, and I'll tell you, the Deepak Chopra, Oprah Winfrey meditation challenges that come on your phone, it's a good way to start. And you in the health industry know that it actually helps us heal physically when we take that time to meditate. If it's not yoga, maybe it's tennis, but you really need that time to just be in the moment.
Well, we've had 14,000 employees go through yoga now. We found that employees that were in the highest quintile of stress had $2,500 a year more of healthcare costs. And when we took them through yoga and mindfulness, we actually saw dramatic drops in their stress levels, improvements in their healthcare costs, higher productivity, and we actually saw our healthcare costs drop in 2013 by 7.5%.
Which is fascinating. I recommend the book Thrive, because they talk about that it's not just this woohoo, I want to make you feel good. It affects the corporate bottom line when you start taking care of employees like that. It's a win-win.
Right. Yep.
Okay. And what about you, Brad? What do you do to balance and to keep yourself in a positive state?
To kind of go off the theme of finding yourself, when I talk about physical fitness, I think I do all sorts of different things. by trade a swimmer, but I did triathlon for a long time. I do yoga, I do spin classes. It's funny, my sister's living with me right now, and she just joined the gym I joined, and we looked through the classes, and she was like, what is body pump? And I was like, I have no idea. You want to try it?
I've done body pump. It can be painful.
So, I mean, I'm in a stage of life where I just enjoy all of those things. What I advocate for is for everybody to find, there are so many different physical fitness regimens out there. There's running groups. There is like, you can go to some places and do tug of war. You can join flag football leagues. Just dedicating yourself to like an hour a day, if that's too much, then an hour a week of physical activity. The statistics on that are groundbreaking on just being able to get out and be active. It's healthy on a physical level, like scientifically you're working out your heart, which adds to longevity and those sorts of things. But from a mental standpoint too, you're taking your mind off of your job, you're taking your mind off of your family, you're taking your mind off your other responsibilities just for a moment to kind of alleviate those stressors and to exert yourself in a different way. And you're focusing on your breathing, you're working on your body awareness. All of those things are fantastic. So I think as an athlete from a very, very young age, I think that's always been an aspect of anything that's ever made me successful. Something I definitely took for granted when I was a younger kid. You know, you're always so tired from swimming, you don't realize the effect that it's having on you until later in life when you kind of look back on things. But anyway, I advocate for that very strongly.
Speaking of tired, you advocate for sleep, right? Both of you. People are like, oh, I don't sleep, I'm going to be more successful because I don't sleep. Both of you would say we need to sleep.
You need to sleep at least 7 hours.
Yeah.
And I would say that you cannot take, as a leader, you cannot take care of others unless you take care of yourself first.
Yeah.
I love that.
So you have to do that first.
I just want to ask a show of hands because a lot of you are leaders, you're running different departments. Anybody there working in their own units and their own companies on implementing more balancing techniques for your employees, physical and mental? Raise your hands if you're doing that at your companies. Not that? I think these guys would say you'd like to see more. And there's a good book at Survive about talking about the statistics that show that it really improves the bottom line of the company too when they focus on, and I know it's slow in coming because a lot of us are working for corporations right now. They're doing a little bit, but maybe not to the extent you've done at Aetna. And so it's encouraging to see that the results help not only employees, but the numbers.
They do it in Silicon Valley and look where their stock prices are.
Right. So we need to do it in Hartford, Connecticut. Would you recommend, if they're out there and wondering, how do I implement this in my company because I want to see these kinds of results, a place to start?
I would reach out to other companies that are doing it. We share freely our programs. There's nothing intellectually, proprietary about any of it. If you want to, we experiment all the time with different kind of programs. We find our employees to be our best test subjects.
So, can either one of you tell us a decision that you made that just was wrong, was bad, and what you learned from it?
I can do that one, but I want to go back to that previous point just real quick. I think from a programming standpoint, you can do a lot of different things to, create initiatives where people are walking 1 million steps a day or whatever. But I think just from an ethos standpoint, it's important to bring on board that first off, you're personally invested in your people and you know when they're out of balance. Like I know when my secretary is working too hard because she slept on the boardroom sofa last night, and that's really not good. I think that from a leadership standpoint, when you read all these different leadership books, and we did training at the Naval Academy, a lot of leadership is about how do you get people to work harder for you. I spent my 7 years in the Navy telling people to go home. I knew when they were working too hard. I think that's an understated aspect of leadership, is knowing when people are working too hard for you. And actually, in my limited experience in the corporate world, I find that corporate world works too hard sometimes. And as a leader, it's your job to know when they're out of balance and tell them, you need to go home, you need to be with your family, you need to take some vacation days, just as much as for other people you need to motivate them. So it's not necessarily a program that's going to solve the problems of people being out of about. It may just be a personal investment. Now, as far as a decision to make, about 8 months previous to my deployment to Afghanistan, actually no, 3 months prior, I put on an additional qualification to my uniform, this EOD officer pin. It was a big deal. I had to take a big board for it. It was a nice promotion for me. My team took me out to celebrate, and the night got out of control, and I ended up getting a DUI that night and almost lost my entire naval career over some really poor decisions. And I guess the lesson that I learned is that you can't, you talk about wearing a tie and you get a shave and you put on a suit. This isn't a leadership suit. It's not like a superhero cape or anything like that. You can take the suit off, you can take the tie off, and you can forget to shave for a couple days, but it doesn't mean your leadership stops. It doesn't mean your character stops. You have to be that person all the time. And I think that those processes, however you find your center, however you find who you are, however you find those priorities, my family comes first, my work comes second, or whatever your priorities list is, it's really important to find that core of your aspect and know that it doesn't stop. There's no time where you can let your hair down, you can have a couple drinks, but it's really important that leader in you, that core aspect of you, it doesn't end at the end of the day. And that's a lesson I learned the hard way, making some pretty bad decisions at midnight in Virginia Beach.
Yeah, I think I could probably paper the walls of this building with the bad decisions I made. And, they show their results in amazing ways. In 2009, Aetna missed its earnings by $550 million after tax. I was president of the company. That was a set of issues that was a whole set of bad decisions that we needed to fix. And I think a lack of bad decisions, if you say you've never had any bad decisions, then you really haven't pushed yourself hard enough to find where the opportunities are. Bad decisions happen all the time because we don't live in a perfect world. And we tend to put things on a spreadsheet and a number, and we say, okay, well, that's the truth, and so therefore everything gets measured against that. And that's how we proceed. Instead of saying, what do we need to do to be present along the way to make sure that as things don't turn out exactly as we thought they were, that we find ways to self-correct. And that's harder to do. That's like, eternal vigilance. That's persistence. That's, being present. That's hard work. That's the hard work of leadership. Making big decisions and sitting up in front of rooms of people and and talking about what leadership is, that's the easy stuff. The hard stuff really is this stuff on your belly, in the mud, crawling along, trying to make sure it all works, because the bad decisions happen all the time.
Well, and you bring a good point that at anyone who's a leader today, and even people who are not, but are in the middle of things, we are all bombarded through technology, through the way our world works, of so much all the time. So how do you prioritize? How do you know what to keep in the forefront? When you're looking at your week, your day, how do you not get overwhelmed and focus on what's the most important?
There are only three things you should be paying attention to at any one point in time as priorities, and then the rest of the stuff's just going to happen. And so, we in the insurance industry, we have a thing called incidence and severity, right? And incidence is, how many times will certain things happen? Okay. Incidence is incidents. People crash cars, people get sick, things happen all the time. It's what do you do about the severity? So what are the most important risks that could happen, and where should you spend your time? Because, and I've talked to a lot of CEOs, A.G. Lafley at P&G, if we pick three things and pay attention to them and we get two of them right, great year. Okay. That's sort of the thing. If you pay attention to all the stuff that's laying around and get caught up in it, you miss the real opportunities. So.
Three things, the rule of threes. We actually use that in news. They say, don't try to make more than 3 points in a story. No one will understand you. So. Right,
three things, and hopefully two of them are right.
Right. Brad?
That actually brings me to something I would hope came out in this discussion is one of the most important aspects of success, in my opinion, is clarity of purpose. So a lot of different organizations and people get lost in the wash on what am I actually trying to do. You get so inundated with the tasking of every day, the laundry and the dog and the family and this and that, the other thing, you kind of forget, like, what am I trying to do this year? And I think it's really a good exercise. That's why New Year's resolutions are such a good thing. Like, what do I want to do this year? What do I really want to do? How am I going to make myself better? And what's my clarity of purpose on an individual level? And what's our clarity of purpose on an organizational level? I think that's really important. As far as prioritization, I go back to that self-finding process. It's really important before you get inundated with different things, before you get stressed out, before you get overwhelmed, before life throws curveballs at you, it's important to have those priorities locked down. And I think that's a very individual exercise. Everybody has different things that are important to me. I don't have a, whoops, excuse me, wow, well, that's really loud. Hey, that's what it is. I'm not married, you know, I don't have an immediate family. I have my mom, I have my sister and my brother, and they're all very, very important to me, but one day my spouse will be the #1 thing, right? So my individual priorities are different than other people who are married. But from an individual level, I have to do that meditation, whether it's a yoga or at midnight in your bed or whatever, but you have to do that finding me process. What is the most important thing to me? Is it your faith? Is it your family? Is it your goldfish? Is it your physical fitness? Those sorts of things. Whatever is most important to you, have that list ironed out so when things do get thrown at you and you are overwhelmed, the most important tactic I find with stress management is one thing at a time. What is the most important thing that I have to take care of right now? According to my priorities list, kind of goes to that severity thing, which is the most severe thing facing me right now, and I'll knock it out one at a time. I find like when you get stressed out, when you get overwhelmed, it's because you're looking at the whole picture. I have to do all of these things today. Mm-hmm. You realize there are only 24 hours in the day, and you can only do one thing at a time. So pick one thing, do it well, and move on to the next thing. And before long, you're back to one of those ebb points where everything's really relaxed and you can go back to being like, I made it through. And now, you know, just get ready for the next time where the wave comes.
And that's, I think, well, devotees of meditation, that's the whole point, is it teaches you how to have a single point of focus also, so you're not just taking in everything and you can actually focus.
Exactly. One of the amazing things of meditation, though, is losing attachment. Because you can't be present and have focus unless you lose attachment to all the noise around you. So a lot of people sit in meditation, they say it's got to be, I'm going to be like totally quiet, and it's got to be like I'm in a black hole and nothing's happening. Wrong. You're dead then. That's what happens. You're dead. So what happen is, as you're sitting in meditation, all this stuff is coming at you. You're thinking about the laundry or the car or the dog or what you got to do at work today. And what you have to do is give it appropriate reverence, respect the fact that you thought about it, and let it go. And when you lose enough attachment to things, the noise goes away, and you have a single point of focus. So it's the progressive elimination of attachment that gets you to single point of focus in meditation.
I know many of you may meditate, maybe you don't. I know we've done some stories on Channel 3 about getting started. There's many, many ways. There's books. I would also say there's tons of free how-tos right on YouTube. So for those of you who can't give up your phone yet for any amount of time, you can actually meditate by looking at your phone. They'll guide you right through it. The Mayo Clinic has an app.
There's an app for that.
Yes, there's an app. So for those of you picking up the kids from school, getting there and waiting for a meeting to start, use those 5 minutes in your car maybe to do that instead of check 15 emails.
No meditating while you're driving.
No meditating while you're driving. That's probably not a good thing. Let me ask you, there might be a couple questions in the audience, but I want to also know, is there anything that you guys really want to tell us that we haven't talked about yet that you think is really important?
One of the things I talk about when I give speeches is the power of community. So we kind of started at an individual level with these sort of meditation recommendations, find that center, find that set of priorities that's individual to you. And then by doing those kind of, I don't know, like building up a foundation of self, it allows you to engage with others better. Right. And that's the essence of leadership, right? And the overall goal of finding yourself and becoming a better person in interaction is to make my community better. As a leader in an organization, what are you trying to do? You're trying to make your organization better. You're trying to define that clear purpose and work towards that purpose as a team. And as the leader of that team, you have to find ways to identify and amplify each individual's strength and mitigate each individual weakness. And you do that by being very not like self-centered is the right word, but it doesn't sound right, I guess. But the overall importance is putting an emphasis on communities. Communities are what accomplish great things, not individuals. I look at the moment that I was standing on the podium at the Paralympics, and the gold medal around my neck was representative of what a community accomplished, not me. And, you know, when I was damaged on the battlefield, there was a medic and there was another guy who came and picked me up when I was down. There was a helicopter pilot who came and picked me up and took me to a surgeon who repaired my face with a team of different doctors and nurses, my mother, and then my swim coach, and there's a long, long, long list. You said you paper the wall of bad decisions. I could paper the wall of all the people who have played roles in me being successful, and that gold medal is not anything that I did individually. It's what a community accomplished when they all worked towards a clear purpose and worked together. So I talk a lot about communities and the power of community, and as a leader, your job is to leverage the power of that community towards a clear purpose for eventual success.
And I think community is a great point for me just to make one more point about where healthcare is headed. And we're doing this in other parts of the world, not fully here in the United States. But we need to redefine what the goal of the healthcare system is, and that should be to make people healthy, productive, as a result economically viable, and then happy. And if we do that person by person and community by community, we have thriving communities, and we have a lot less of the incivility that we have in the dialogue in our nation today between people and between communities and between classes. And I think this whole idea of focusing on, instead of the absence of disease, the improvement of the productivity and viability of people and communities is going to do more for us as a goal in designing what the future of healthcare needs to look like here.
And it brings a good point that one of the other questions, the suggested questions, was you've got to get people to follow you. You guys talked about a little bit of this, but to be a leader, it's clear you're saying it's not just about you. You need to think about the bigger picture. But how do you get people when you've got to make a really big course of change? Maybe they don't support you. They think your idea is bad, but you're in charge and you've got to get people to follow you. What would you do to rally the troops, so to speak?
Authenticity, communicate, 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 communicate. And when you're about to throw up from communicating, you're halfway there. Okay. And then enlist the people in the organization and find out who wants to be on the team or not. You know, it's a little different than the military, where everybody's on the team because
they have to be.
They have to be. But in my world, we need to find the people that want to take the mission forward. And if they don't, we need to find opportunities for them to do something else. But we need to find the people that are going to rally around what we're trying to accomplish. And that's really, really hard in large organizations.
Well, before we move on to Brad, I want to say in a large organization, I mean, I work for a Fortune 500 company, so much of it now is just done by emails, which the employees are already bombarded with emails, so they might not even take time to read all those careful words you chose. Do you think that, how do you get that communication across? I imagine there has to be some face-to-face. There has to be some more, not just sending out management by memo.
So there's the apostrophe, which is you communicate to your management team and they communicate to their management team. It goes down through the organization. That's like playing telephone, the game telephone. And then there's evangelism. It's getting actually in front of the people that are doing the real work. And so you have to do both. What we do inside our organization when we communicate with key community, we just sent out a key communication on our strategy as a company. We block the ability to forward it.
Okay.
And we said, this is the material you must personally present to your employees. And because it was funny, we sent it out, and all of a sudden we get all these phone calls. I can't forward the email. What am I supposed to do?
No, because anyone working knows.
No, that's what's going to happen. And I've got 6,000 emails in my inbox because I don't look at email anymore.
You don't? Okay, so I was going to ask you, I mean, that's a big thing in Thrive. They say not letting email rule your life.
Right,
Leaders don't do that. You don't?
If there's more than 5 people, 10 people CC'd on it, I don't need to look at it. There's 9 other people that are going to look at it. So. And the place hasn't blown up yet, and people know how to get a hold of me directly through social media. I don't answer voicemails either, so those are a waste of time. And so I communicate directly, and that's the only way, face-to-face, that you can communicate effectively.
So meaning also telling your employees it's okay. I mean, obviously you can't have 6,000 employees coming into you, but like it's okay to come in and talk to your boss. Because I do think people are so busy that sometimes the employee is like not clear, but they don't want to go bother their boss because they seem so busy, and everything's coming by email.
So we're playing with social media platforms inside the company. We have people communicating inside the company, a program called Jive, and we have a number of others that we use. My goal is to turn the email system off. I'd love to just shut the whole thing down because I think it's a horrible waste of storage space and time for people.
And I know that some companies, at least from Ariana Huffington's book, that they're actually using software that shuts it down past 6 p.m. because they don't want their employees sitting on it all night.
That's actually a law in France, by the way.
It is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Employees are not to work on their email after 6 p.m. or on the weekends, and it's actually a violation of French law.
That's awesome.
That people are using it.
Well, just to add to that, I interviewed the
Crazy, but
it sounds like not a bad one to me. I mean, I certainly live on my phone, but just to add to that, I interviewed for a similar piece a man who wrote a book, the executive producer of CBS This Morning, big guy in the broadcasting world, and he said, how did a maniac producer put down his BlackBerry and start to live? He had a near-death experience, and he said the change he made at work, he's no longer looking at his phone all the time, that if it's really important, I tell people, you need to call me. I want to talk to you. So we're kind of going back in that way. Yeah. And what do you think about managing the communication of, I mean, you talked a little bit with your troops, but I mean, getting a message across. Is there a tone you use? Is there a way to get people to follow you when maybe they don't really want to follow you?
Interestingly enough, just on the communication standpoint on a personal level, as a blind person, I'm relegated to a phone that talks to me, and I can't really, email's annoying now, and the internet is annoying. I cannot stand trying to order something off of somebody's website where I can't really figure out what it is. I just call everybody's customer service now, and I judge companies based on how quickly can I get to a real person and how willing are they to help me look at stuff. Yeah. Oh, thanks.
So, I guess the clapping is because we want real people, real communication.
Yeah, oh, I love this company. Like Yankee Candle. I called Yankee Candle.
You like them? They're friendly?
I have a Yankee Candle in every room now. Mark uses the word authenticity, and I use that, I kind of, in the same vein, use the word personal investment. So we talk a lot about communication, and what we're really dancing around is this idea of, I'm personally invested in you. I know your name, I know your spouse's name, I know your children's names. I, as your boss, care about you. You are not just an employee to me. You're not just a dot on my Excel spreadsheet. You are one of my people. We're part of a team, and we care. Like on a soccer team, we care what the defenseman's going to do. We know what our formations are going to be. It's the same thing in the corporate world. Every person is important, and if you don't feel important, you're not going to act important, and you're not going to be an impactful player for the team. So it's all about personal investment. And from a leadership standpoint, it's important to walk the walk. So for every major decision, when you talk about these generic decisions and these programming kind of things, I understand that in larger organizations, the people making decisions are pretty far removed from everybody else, and it's a big challenge to do this kind of accordion communication thing, and there's books and books and books and books and books on how to do that, and I'm not very well versed in that. I'm a small unit guy, have always been a small unit guy, and probably always will be a small unit guy, so I'm not expert at that, but I do know that I could never stand in front of my guys and issue out an order or a decree or request without backing it up. So if I had to make my guys go buy a particular uniform item or go do whatever the policy was, there was a silly policy for a while. The Marine Corps was making everybody, whenever they went out in town, they had to wear tucked-in shirts and khaki pants and a collared shirt. I remember when I was younger, that was everyone was a big deal. Everyone was like, God, it's such an annoying policy. But as a leader, if you're going to issue that decree, you absolutely have to follow that. I have to tuck in my shirt, I have to wear khaki pants, and I have to wear a collared shirt. It's a stupid rule, but if you're going to issue it, you have to follow it. So it's one of those, from a programming standpoint, from a decision standpoint, from an ethos standpoint, if you are going to put something out to your people, you have to walk the walk. And you can't stand behind a program or a policy unless you're walking the walk. So I think that's really important. Personally invest yourself, and then make sure that you're walking the walk. If you're putting something out, you have to make that a part of your ethos. And like we talked about the suit can come off, but that leadership role doesn't. So if you're if you're telling people, like, I think everybody should go do yoga as part of our corporate ethos or whatever, and then everyone sees, like, you're not going to yoga ever, and they're like, well, how come you say that thing about the yoga thing? You're like, well, it's just important for you to do it. You're like, no, it doesn't work that way.
Just
if you're
like
going to
parenting children.
Exactly, yeah. Well, I don't know anything about that, but Gizzy.
I'm aware that we're almost done with our time, and I just want to, I have one more thing I'd like to do with you guys, but just to let everyone know, I don't want to feel rude when I run out of the stage, but we tape better at 10 o'clock, and so I'm going to be flying out of here after I was going to do one more thing, but I think Ted was raising his hand.
Well, thank you. Inspired by the title of this talk, The Heart of Leadership, and you kind of touched on it, but speak a little bit more about how you show that you care. Like at Aetna or in the military, how do you demonstrate as a leader that you care, that you have compassion, dare I say, that you love the people that you're leading? How do you do that?
You said it. It comes. It just comes. By being authentic, by being real, by really making that a part of your ethos, by actually caring, your people will know. I think. So you have to, if you're really far removed, you have to make it a deliberate effort, and it starts as a deliberate effort and becomes a habit and then becomes part of your ethos. I'm going to make it a goal. It's a goal. 3 times every day, I'm going to ask somebody something about themselves that I didn't already know. And learn about your people and become compassionate and become personally invested in them, then they will know. I don't think it's not necessarily a show as it is making it a part of your character.
It's in the million things you do every day. It has, you're constantly on. So when I go do site visits, I do an employee town hall, but then I go through every cubicle and shake every employee's hands and look them in the face and say thank you for the work that they do. And that's hard to do because we have some offices with 2,000 people in them. And you just spend a lot of time doing that. But that, and then when you go now, people expect me to do it. And so it's built into the schedule.
You carry a lot of Purell. I'm just kidding.
Yes, I do, actually. I've gotten 6. And so that whole idea of all the little things you do every day, how you appear, when you appear, what kind of things you say, the apologies you make, all that sort of thing shows that you really mean it. And so it can't be just one idea or one thing. I think, boards of directors whose bosses get away with undercover boss ought to fire them because they're not, they're obviously not available to all their employees.
Right. Yeah. Elliot?
And on that note, let us say thank you to our distinguished panel for, I think, an enlightening morning. I don't know about you, but I was furiously making some notes that I know I'm going to take back to my organization. In closing, Brad touched on it. He's a 2-time gold medal winner and added 1 silver in the London 2012 Paralympics. You saw it in the video. As a memento for joining us this morning and in recognition of the partnership that got us here, we have a gift of appreciation we would like everyone to pick up on their way out. It is your version of a gold medal. Please take one, and they're on the tables outside. Fidelco staff will share it with you. As you look at it on your desk or on your shelf, or maybe a little too heavy to carry in your pocket, think about the partnership. Think about the leadership cues and advice that we got this morning, and quite frankly, the sharing. These 2 gentlemen put out everything in front of this group. They took the risks that they talked about. They walked the walk that's required to be a leadership. And I want to thank everyone for being here. And Oz, thank you for this, and I know you want to have some closing.
Thanks, Elliot, very much. Thank you. Kara, thank you very much for moderating this. We greatly appreciate it. By the way, Gizzy is up here and has been superb the whole morning. So I just want to make sure that she's really recognized.
There you go.
We're talking about me. And Mark, that tie's pretty good, so if you want to get rid of it, I could use another one, so I really do.
That's why it still looks good.
It does look good. On your desk, on your tables rather, there are cards for upcoming events. I call your attention to the Pulse of the Region show that'll be on this Saturday to promote the November 18th event that the Hartford is hosting. And I just want to say, any of you who really want to know more about Fidelco and more about Lieutenant Snyder's experience, both Elliot and Brad were on the show last Saturday. If you're interested in hearing more, that's on our website, and you can link to that and get it. It augments, I think, everything that Mark and Brad did here this morning with Kara's moderation. So the three of you, thank you very much for an inspiring hour. We greatly appreciate it. Thank you all very much for being here.